Picture this. Construction workers are digging a foundation for your dream home when their shovels strike something hard. Not rock, not roots, bones, human bones, stacked in neat rows beneath the earth. This isn't some Hollywood horror movie. This is happening right now across America. A federal GAO report confirmed that crews blasted tribal burial grounds during U.S.-Mexico border wall construction, scattering bone fragments across the desert. From North Carolina to the borderlands, developers are building over forgotten graveyards and sacred sites. What happens when you build your future on someone else's final resting place? Today, we'll follow real excavations that exposed the hidden cost of progress. But first, you need to understand exactly what these workers experience in that moment when everything changes. The moment everything changes. The sound of metal hitting bone is something construction workers never forget. It's not like hitting rock or concrete. There's a hollow crack, followed by silence that seems to stretch forever. Your shovel just pierced through someone's skull, someone who was buried here decades or centuries ago, and suddenly your regular Tuesday morning becomes something you'll never shake. Picture the exact moment when a routine dig becomes something else entirely. The excavator operator pulls back his bucket and sees fragments of white mixed with the dirt. The crew chief walks over, his boots crunching on gravel, and peers into the hole. That's when the sudden silence hits. No more machinery, no more shouting. Just the foreman's radio crackling with static as someone calls it in. The work stops dead, and 20 guys stand around a hole in the ground, staring at what used to be a person. Meet the crews who've lived this nightmare. In Chesterfield, Virginia, crews extending Nash Road uncovered a 19th century burial vault with a metal placard dating to the mid-19th century. The backhoe operator said he knew something was wrong when he pulled up the intact brick structure. Down on the Mexican border, construction teams building the wall have uncovered Native American burial sites so old that the bones crumble to dust when exposed to air. One crew foreman described finding a complete skeleton with turquoise jewelry still wrapped around the neck bones. The immediate chaos that erupts is like watching a crime scene unfold. Police tape goes up within hours. Archaeologists rush to the scene with brushes and measuring tools, treating every bone fragment like evidence. Developers watch their construction timelines crumble as lawyers start making phone calls. The site becomes off-limits, sometimes for months, while experts figure out who these people were and where they came from. Here's where it gets even more unsettling. Workers describe an instant change in the atmosphere once bones are exposed. A heaviness settles over the site that makes grown men uncomfortable. Some crews refuse to work night shifts after discovering remains, claiming the site feels different after dark. As one tribal activist described the border wall construction, it became a nightmare down here in the borderlands when sacred sites were disturbed. By law, any remains older than 50 years must be reviewed by state archaeologists or tribal authorities, a process that can halt work for months. Authorities must determine the age of the remains first. DNA testing can reveal ethnic origin, which determines whether Native American tribes have legal claim to the remains. The whole process can take months while construction sits frozen. The haunting reality of what gets unearthed reveals forgotten pieces of history. The Chesterfield vault contained a coffin that survived underground for over 150 years. Some sites reveal evidence of epidemic burials, where dozens of people were buried quickly during disease outbreaks. Entire family plots emerge, forgotten by time but perfectly preserved. The unsettling truth about how common these discoveries really are might surprise you. The Virginia Department of Transportation alone encounters unmarked graves during highway projects at least twice every year. Florida's coastal development has uncovered so many Native American burial sites that the state created a special task force just to handle the discoveries. Federal records show that major construction projects encounter human remains in roughly 15% of excavations that go deeper than 8 feet. That means thousands of forgotten graves are disturbed every year across America. But these physical discoveries represent just the beginning. When developers calculate delay costs against legal requirements, the battle lines get drawn between profit and respect for the dead. Sacred ground under siege. The permits get signed anyway. Your great-great-grandmother's bones will be scattered across a construction site by next Tuesday, and the law says that's perfectly fine. Enter the world of legal battles where ancient burial rites clash with modern development, where money talks louder than sacred ground. In corporate boardrooms across America, developers sit around polished tables calculating the cost of delays versus the cost of lawsuits. They run the numbers on how much it costs to properly relocate human remains versus how much they lose if construction stops for 6 months. The math usually favors the bulldozers. The shocking truth about North Carolina reveals just how deep these connections run. Senate Republicans proposed weakening the law requiring construction to halt until the state archaeologist clears remains. State Senator Michael Lazzara pushed the proposal after Cedar Point Developers, LLC donated at least $7,500 to his campaign. These same developers had already spent $500,000 on unexpected archaeological work when they hit burial sites. Lazzara defended the proposal, calling it good common sense, and claiming it wasn't tied to his donors' financial support. The Home Builders Association helped craft parts of the bill, making it harder to halt construction due to archaeological concerns. The devastating case of the U.S.-Mexico border wall shows what happens when money and politics override sacred ground. The GAO report states construction harmed cultural resources by blasting at a tribal burial site. Ancient remains that had rested undisturbed for centuries were destroyed with full federal approval, mixed with concrete and steel to form the foundation of America's southern barrier. In Sarasota Bay, surveys found Native American artifacts and human bone from 450 to 1500 CE, yet developers brush past archaeologists' advice for a 50-foot buffer. The Aqua by the Bay project threatens these centuries-old sites where archaeological surveys revealed ceramics, animal bones, and shells from the Weeden Island and Safety Harbor periods. The project's 169-acre phase would encroach on 2 sites listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Here's what makes this even more disturbing. The Real ID Act allowed border wall construction to bypass all environmental and cultural protection laws. The Trump administration used this legal loophole to ignore the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act entirely. Lycan Yordahl from the Center for Biological Diversity said the administration cast those laws aside and plowed forward with no thought about the consequences. Ancient protections that took decades to establish vanished with the stroke of a pen. Between 1672 and 1927, Charleston reused 4 paupers' cemeteries across 45 acres, burying over 50,000 poor and enslaved people, now buried under offices and stadiums. A disturbing pattern emerges across America. Developers discover burial sites during initial surveys, then calculate delay costs against legal expenses. They hire lawyers who specialize in finding loopholes in archaeological protection laws. Others submit permits through multiple agencies simultaneously, hoping one approves before others can object. The Government Accountability Office confirmed what indigenous leaders knew all along. Construction crews were systematically destroying sacred sites with federal approval. The report documented how border wall construction damaged cultural and natural resources, altered water flows, and impacted endangered species. But the human cost, measured in desecrated graves and scattered ancestors, never made it into the official cost-benefit analysis. What happens when we ignore these warnings and build anyway affects more than just the construction crews who make these discoveries. In conclusion, the next time you see construction breaking ground, remember, they might not just be building your future, they could be awakening someone else's past. What happens when we disturb the dead isn't just about respect or history. It's about the consequences that follow when we ignore the warnings. Remember, GAO found blasting at tribal graves is government approved under waivers. When these graves are broken for profit, we lose history, culture, and a chance to honor ancestors. When developers blast through sacred ground for profit, they're not just destroying archaeological evidence, they're breaking bonds between the living and the dead that were never meant to be severed. If this unsettles you, hit like and share your thoughts below. How should we protect the past?